And okay, we are live. It says so on YouTube. Hello, Alina from Visual Versa. How you doing?
Great, how are you?
Yeah, I am very good. I am pumped. I have been looking forward to this since last week. And I'm just like, yes, I have so many things that I'm excited to talk about and chat about and riff off of. And I have visual note taking books on my shelf that I've not opened. I'm just like,
I
they're
know
so
that.
cool. And they're like Doodle Revolution things, how to draw a business, how to do a whole bunch of stuff. And so when I first started chatting with you, I'm like, oh, a visual note taker person in the real life. Like, this is awesome. This is amazing. So maybe let's like reverse. If you meet somebody at a party
Mm-hmm.
or an event or something, and they say, "So, like, what do you do, Alina? Like, what do you do on a daily basis? Like, how do you answer that question?"
It depends the age of the person. This doesn't sound okay, but you'll understand in a second. So if I'm talking to someone like a professional person, I would be like, you know how like our world is more diverse than ever, and we have tons of meetings and conferences where people are just nodding and then they leave and they're not sure what they talked about. And most likely I will get like, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, I go to those meetings and then I doodle as people are talking. So if there's something that comes up that is not what they meant, they can have that conversation right there and make sure that they're on the same page literally. And then we'll take it from there because I normally get tons of questions about it.
I can't imagine. Like,
Yeah,
like
and if it's
you
someone like,
doodle? You
yeah.
doodle for a living? You mean you draw? Like,
Yes, I draw for a living, and I get to learn about like tons of stuff. And they're like, "So, so you're an expert in everything that you draw about?" I'm like, "No, most of the stuff I don't even have an idea what they're talking about, but I still doodle what they're
okay,
talking about." But if the person who's asking me the question is like a kid, like if my kids ask me all the time, they're like, "So," because they come and I'm like have doodles on top of my table, and they're like, "What do you do again?" Then I tell them, I'm like, I remind adults how to draw. And they're like, "You remind? They forgot about it?" I'm like, "Yeah, we forget about it." So I like help them reconnect to that skill that they used to have. And they're like, "What? That's so cool." So they tell people like my mom teaches adults how to draw. Yeah,
that's
basically.
amazing. I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
because, man, I it reminds me a lot of. So, like 2 years ago, I got into basically being a full-time artist. Okay, maybe it's actually almost 3 years ago,
Congrats.
and
It takes a huge leap.
it was crazy. It was
Yeah.
because of the NFT scene, and that was blowing up, and I just felt like expressing myself more. So I've been doodling my entire life, and I jumped into just doodling better with more color and gradients, and just making it look better, rather than something on a piece of paper in a notebook or something. And when I began to speak about my art in front of people, it started off being pretty nerve wracking and like, I don't know what I'm saying. I just draw, you know? But the more I spoke, it was like people became aware and alive of how they used to be a kid and how they used to draw.
Yeah.
And when they saw my dragons or my cloudy monsters or my suns or my bird, they were like, your stuff's not that good, Rich. And I was like, okay, continue. You know what I'm saying? They were like, but it reminds me of being a kid. And
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So like you're like reconnecting with your kid self. And when you're talking about teaching adults how to draw again, it kind of sounds like that too. It's like, let me teach you how to be a kid again.
Yeah. And then so that has its challenges though, because then I go into an organization and they're like, "We're gonna do what? Like let's get down to the real stuff. We have to do stuff." And it's like, yeah, and like reconnecting to that kid of like the non-serious stuff and the non-productive is gonna open up a whole new other self. Like it's gonna open up better conversations, better ideas. Because as kids, we were not as scared of saying what we thought, so we would share all the ideas. And organizations miss a lot of those because people are scared to share them. So it's like it has benefits to reconnect to that, inner kid, besides just the having fun. There's all kinds of sorts of things that get, kind of that open up possibilities in the workplace as well.
Okay. So it sounds like you've got like two things going on. Like one, you do the doodling while other people are talking.
Yeah.
It helps them. But then it also sounds like you're teaching people how to draw, how to doodle for their team's benefit, for their personal benefit.
Correct.
Are those two different things, or do you do them at the same time, or like one closely after the other?
Sometimes we do both, but they're two different things. So one is like, I just want to bring you to my event or my meeting, and as we have the conversation, you're going to draw what we're talking about. So at the end, there's a visual summary of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, like we want to have an extra tool that we can use as a team, or like, that people want to use as an individual, facilitator, consultant, whatever it is, as a teacher, where I teach them, okay, this is like the basic of visual notes. And again, it doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be, like a doodle, a scribble, whatever you want to call it, that can communicate your idea, over which you can have a discussion of like, oh, that's not what I meant. Let's do this. And then, like you're just scribbling while you're having a conversation, but you're putting what's in here there. So you avoid the and then like, I have no idea what we just talked about.
Oh man, that I don't know if there's like any visual note-taking skits or comedy sketches online or something, but that could just like sum it up so much. Like I have ADHD and I often just look at people and I don't know, it feels like half an hour could go by and I'm like nowhere and I'm like nodding, saying aha, and I get to the end, I'm like, oh damn, I can't even ask them anything because they may have already told me everything. And now I just, okay, bye. Or someone's explaining something and I'm just like, I lost you like when you said my name. Like I've got something in my mind I'm currently working on, like I can't concentrate. But oftentimes I'm like, can you just draw me a picture? Like honestly, that will help me a lot. Like, what are you talking about? And no one does that. They're like, what do you mean draw you a picture? And I'm like, okay, let's go. Like if I've got a mathematical problem, like I start drawing stuff, even if it's like part equation, part text, part pictures. Yeah. I'm like, this is how my brain works, And
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's like more and more we're realizing how neurodiverse we are. And we have that common thing of images that connect us. Yes, yet we have put it on the side because it's like kid stuff, right? Like any person, not only the neurodivergent ones, but any person could benefit from that. But we stop doing it because it's not serious and it's not work stuff. But it could be, and it would make our life so much fun and so much easier. And, we would save so many misunderstandings, because how many times the happens and then I go work on my thing, you go work on your thing, and then we meet again and then we're both going in completely different directions. And it's just like,
yeah,
a napkin and a pencil could have like solved that problem.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, yeah, my wife often says, so how was your meeting? Like, what did you meet about? And I'm like, yeah, good question. Like, we discussed some stuff, good vibes, but yeah, I can't really like give you some concrete details about what we decided on. But I'm just going to go pitch up there tomorrow and hopefully everything's going to be fine. But it's like, I was going to say, like, I facilitate workshops. I love the idea of workshops, but particularly this idea of not letting people speak, but letting people write on Postits or sticky notes. And then you get out of that people just talking and not listening. And the loudest person always winning the argument or the discussion or coming up with the best idea. And so you let these introverts speak, all in this common language of, putting these sticky notes on a whiteboard or on a wall or pieces of paper. But I'm now thinking like, oh, damn, like what if you introduce far more doodling and drawing into that? Yeah. And a lot of people might be like, yeah, but like Jill, she's really good at drawing. It's going to be unfair. Then you'd be like, okay, let's take half an hour in the beginning. Let me teach you how to take some visual notes. And while we're going, if you want to try draw the company, this is how you might want to draw the company or money or whatever. Have you experienced that like crossover between like, I would say more traditional workshops and then more like drawing workshops?
Yeah, absolutely. So before getting into live visual note taking, I discovered because of a master's program I was doing, and I design sessions and workshops, and I go into organizations and sometimes do strategic sessions as well. But since I became a visual note taker, my thing is, or like my, that whatever workshop I facilitate, it has some kind of creative methods. And by that, I mean either doodling or using metaphor cards or using pictures, anything that is non-traditional or non-linear. And yes, I get resistance, but once we get over that, I also get these like, whoa, this is so cool. And people get excited because, as you said, like, we connect to that inner kid that used to get excited and was not afraid to show it. So the energy is cool. And yeah, like I just tell people, do you know how to draw a circle, a rectangle, and lines? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay,
we're good.
We're good. You have all we need for us to be able to take visual notes. That's all we need to get started.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about adults saying we have to do stuff, it's like, yeah, but from my perspective, like doodling helps you do stuff. Like it's a form of play, of rest, of relaxation. Like it helps you do the big important stuff or whatever. And I think a lot of the time we can get so caught up in doing the important stuff that we forget to do the fun stuff, which actually helps us do the important stuff. But I can imagine like in meetings and brainstorm sessions and, key decision kind of on-sites or off-sites or whatever they're called, like people don't want to do that fun stuff. They're like, we need to decide something. We need to like ideate. And you're like, yeah, but it is going to help, even if it just like frees you up just to think better. But this will also like help everybody communicate better. Everybody, be on the same page. Have there been like an example or, I don't know, maybe let's say like your favorite kind of meeting that this just like exploded in people's brains, like resistance to like aha kind of a moment?
Yes, I remember. It was yesterday. We were in a pretty like big international meeting with people with high roles. So like I had like these people in suits and like serious looking at me, and I'm explaining this thing of how we're like gonna play with Play-Doh and do some doodling, and they're looking at me like, And the nice thing is we can, and it's possible to mix this productive thing and fun thing together. So it's like, we're going to get the stuff done. We're just going to get it done while having fun. And they're looking at me like, and I remember I finished explaining the activity, and I just have like blank faces, and I'm just standing there. And I always tell myself, don't jump too fast into trying to explain yourself. Like, I try to count until 5 and see if someone jumps. And I counted until 5, no one, nothing. And I'm like, okay, we're going to give them 2 seconds more. And then someone raises their hand, and I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, so what you meant is this. And I'm like, yeah, you got it. And then she's like, okay, we can do that. Right, guys, we can do that. And people are like, yeah, we can do that. And I'm like, whew. And then I'm like, okay, so I start the timer. I always walk around and start talking. And suddenly I know when an activity is going well because the room gets loud. Like people are talking. There's energy. They're in subgroups, and it's like getting loud, and people are talking about it. And I'm like, okay. And then time's up, and they're like, no, we want more time. And I'm like, okay. And then at the end, they were like so excited presenting their ideas. And I was like, whew. But for a moment, I was just standing there, like in my head, going over 3 different ways that I could do the same activity because I thought it was not going to work.
Oh, that's amazing. That like that like shift and like, okay, we're actually not just gonna have a normal meeting here to, oh, let's do something different, let's embrace it, and then like absolutely loving it by the end.
Yeah.
It's like the best. And I'm hoping that those same people will keep on using those techniques like in the next meeting, or like even in like a one-to-one, or even for their own selves, you know, like their journals, their notebooks, that kind of stuff.
That's my hope as well. And I tell people, like, do you know, like, sometimes when you're in a meeting, they're like doing like little hearts and like tic-tac-toes, and they're like, yeah. I'm like, what's the difference? The only thing is that you're going to be actually writing or doodling about what you're talking about. So instead of like thinking about your lunch or supper or whatever, you're going to still be using your hands doing things to keep yourself busy that are going to help you after the meeting, remind you of what you talked about. So it's like you're already doing it. Just start doing it in a productive way, if I want to use the vocabulary that people like.
Yeah, I mean, like throughout school, like that's how I concentrated. Like I know even in like church meetings and stuff like that, I would just be drawing, and teachers would often be like, "Rich, what are you doing? You need to be concentrating." I'm like, "Yeah, but I am. Like this is like the last 5 minutes of what you said." And
Yeah.
then like they'd look at my book and be like, "But you're drawing," and I'm like, "Yes, because I'm listening," you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I in university I saw some people taking like elaborate notes, like really cool visual notes. It looked like they were artists, like legitimate artists, like taking notes. I'm like, I just want to do that. Like I don't care what you're note taking. I just want to draw like that. You know, it just looks so cool and just looks like I can then learn from that. And I can imagine like in a meeting, like I've never actually been in a meeting with a visual note taker, but like
Okay,
just
when are we
knowing
gonna
that,
do it?
just knowing that someone's there, like recording everything, it would just feel so like, like I can just like relax a little bit and think about this, and then be like, okay, talked about that over there, talked about that over there. Okay, James said that. Okay, now let me think again. Okay, I have an idea. You know, like it just feels like this is the way it should be. Like, why does not every company have like an in-house visual note taker?
I don't know. I hope that that's the way we're going one day, hopefully. But like, it even helps with the efficiency of the conversations. I tell people, if you see me like crossing my hands and doing nothing, it's because you're repeating yourselves. Just look at the drawings and move forward. And people love to repeat themselves. People love to talk. So it's like sometimes you're just going over and over the same thing. It's like you already talked about it 5 different ways. You know, like,
Another arrow, another arrow, another
yeah.
arrow, another
I'm like,
arrow.
okay, if I'm coloring too much, you're staying on the same topic. Or like sometimes even looking at things, it's like, oh, you know, I just saw a connection, as you said, like, oh, I have an idea here. But you were able to see those things out there and make the connection that maybe if they were not in front of you, you would have moved past them because, you know, you're already into another topic. So it
Yeah.
helps people build on each other's ideas instead of like repeating the same thing in different ways.
Yeah, man, I love this. So, is there like a group of people that advocate for visual note takers and workshops out there? Like, I'm part of like the AJ and Smart world of workshopping, um, and I don't know, it feels like they've made it cool, but it always has felt like there's been workshopping people, visual note taking people, creative people there, but like just somewhere else, like not quite tangible for me until maybe like 3 years ago. Um, how do companies like decide, hey, we should get a visual note taker in? Like, do they come across you, your talks, your Instagram profile, your LinkedIn profile, and be like, what's she doing? Like, or does someone how does that relationship start?
I I mean, I started doing this about 10 years ago. And when I started doing it, I think every single person that I talked about what I was doing was like, you do what? And then it would take me so much time and like these and videos and pictures for them to like kind of understand. And then I would meet people that at a meeting that were like, oh, you explained it, but I didn't completely get it until I saw you doing it. And now like I think it's becoming more and more common. So I would say half and half, like most people, like sometimes I say I'm a visual note taker and they're like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I was at a meeting and I saw someone doing it. And I'm like, whew, it's so refreshing to like find that. So yeah, it happens a lot that people see me doing it at an event and then they approach me and they're like, at my company, we're having this event and I want you to come and do the same thing. So like after they see it, they're like, oh, I think we need that. Or sometimes they're talking with friends or family and they're like, we're doing this event and we have these and these challenges. And someone will tell them, oh, I went to an event where I saw this. So most of the time is because either themselves or someone who they know have had the experience. It's one of those things that, experiencing it is different than just like explaining how it works. Like seeing it.
That's that like whole experiencing a thing, it does play a massive role. I remember like running my first workshop, just silencing all of the people that would normally just be shouting or talking really loudly or talking for so long. And there were just so many ideas. And I was like, this is why we're doing this, and that output, they were just like, whoa, Rich, like, this is incredible. Like, this is how we should run all meetings. I'm like, yeah, that's what you say now, but it probably won't happen. But yeah, this is, exactly how we should do this.
Yeah.
So how did you get into visual note taking? Like, I don't know, like, did you do this, have you been doodling your whole life? Like, at what point were you like, yeah, I'm going to do my first visual note taking in a meeting? Like, how does one become a visual note taker?
That is a question that we would need a whole podcast to cover. I'm going to try to like summarize it. And I think the more I talk to visual note takers, the more I realize we come from all kinds of paths. And that's what is kind of nice and rich about it. It's like, it proves once more that it doesn't matter what you do, you're able to embrace this tool if you want to, and if you think it's going to add value to your life. I have a really like non-linear path. I immigrated about 18 years ago, more or less, because I did the back and forth a little bit. But so I'm originally from Colombia, and right now I live in Montreal, Canada. And after some years of being here, I started doing a master's program that I told you about before. And it was about organizational change and organizational psychology. And it was really, really very heavy. And I couldn't keep up with my notes. Like, somehow I would like, it blocked me if I didn't know how to write a word. And people are like, well, we could just write it. And if it's not write it. Like, if you didn't write it correctly, it's okay. And I'm like, rationally, I know that. But I would get stuck in the fact that I didn't know how to spell it. And then miss part of the content of the class. Until I started just doodling. So like, if I didn't know how to write a word, I would do a doodle and keep moving, and then doodle and keep moving. And then a prof saw my notes and she was like, oh, you do visual note taking, you do graphic recording. And I was like, I do what?
So what?
And I haven't even heard about that. So I went home, I looked for it, and I was like, people they get paid to do this? I want to do that.
Amazing.
Like, that's so cool. So I started doing it in class, and then from doing it in class to doing it in events at the university, and then from events to like, so it just started like, it organically started growing. And then I was like, I think this has potential and I can do this. So yeah, after trying it for like some time, I quit my full-time job. I used to work as a financial advisor at a bank.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then started doing this full-time, and it's been 10 years now. And so far, so good. I love it more every day.
Wow. Massive congrats. Like, when I hear people going from finance to something very different, I'm like, that's a massive jump. It's not like
finance. I was also in like I've been like jumping from one side to the other forever. I always loved doodling, but I guess I didn't trust I could make a career out of it until I could.
Oh man, it's pretty crazy, right? Like, I've been drawing, doodling, doing art since I was a kid. And at some point you're like, this is very fun. I doubt I can have so much fun and get paid to do it.
Yeah.
I feel like this numbers thing is very difficult. I don't enjoy it a lot. I bet a lot of people must, be willing to pay a lot of money for me to not enjoy this, because I'm also good at it. And yeah, that makes sense. It's like, come on, like, you're good at it. Come on.
Yeah. that it's unfortunate, but it's, I think, the reality. And especially like as an immigrant, I had this thing of like, I left a lot of stuff behind. It better be worth it, right? Like, I have to make something out of this whole experience. And, a financial career seems something worthy. So I'm going to do it, even though I haven't been a numbers person, but, it seems cool. But I learned a lot. I met wonderful people, but I didn't breathe numbers and finances. And I think, my mental health and my friends and everyone could see that I was like dimming slowly. And that doesn't happen when I do what I do.
That's like, it's really powerful. Like just the idea of dimming slowly. It's just like, it's a very beautiful picture, but like incredibly sad.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot of people like that out there. And it's one of the reasons why I have this podcast. I'm like, people, there are very interesting people doing very interesting things. And they didn't start just doing interesting things. Like what is this journey into doing this interesting thing? Like, there is this interesting thing, first of all. Like, you're like, people are going to be like, what do you mean visual note taking? Like, what do you mean workshopping? What do you mean? Like, even graphic design when I was 17, I was like, I walked into this university and I'm like, so people get paid to do this? Like this stuff on the wall? People get paid to do this, people? They're like, yeah, that's called graphic design or illustration. And I'm like, I'm coming here. This is great. I want to do this. But at my like very traditional high school, like art was pastel painting and paint painting and ceramics. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is boring. It's just like opening your eyes to what's possible. But I find it really cool that you were you were doing something, but you didn't know what you were doing. Like, I find that incredible. And like, it takes a professor or a teacher or someone to like call that out of you, to be like, hey, like, you're good at this. And this is also what it's called. And you should go check it out. Like, I find that incredible. And I think that there's a lot of people who have that, but either don't spend time around people who care or who know or would be able to like draw that out and be like, actually, you're really good at this.
And to support you through the process, because it's not like it doesn't happen from one day to another, right? Like I also know my blessings in the sense that I had a husband who supported me, or a family who was open to it. I had my first comments of like, oh, you're gonna change careers again. And like, looking back now, I'm like, thank goodness I did it despite the comments, because I'm in my third or fourth try, but I finally found something that I'm happy about. I still have many years before I get to retire, and I would have been miserable doing something that I was not enjoying. But so like, I know it's not the reality for everyone, that we cannot just say, okay, I'm gonna like quit my job and do it. But there's ways to do things in which either we start creating slowly that path, or we find a way in which we can make our day-to-day job more fun and more, doable, that we can enjoy at least what we're doing. It doesn't mean that you have to change a career to reconnect with that passion. You can find little ways in which you can implement or like include creative habits or whatever it is within your reality nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, sheesh, like, I had a recent like epiphany about the importance of play. And like, people would see my studio and see what I do and like, you're very playful, Rich. And I'm like, yeah, but sometimes it feels like I'm pretty serious about the playful stuff. Or, sometimes I even, like, consider myself like too lucky to be doing what I'm doing, considering all the pain and suffering that's happening in the world, stuff like that. So I was just like, a couple of months like of play, like the importance of play. And I put these little reminders around my studio, like, how can I make this more fun? How can I make this more playful? Like, one, like, cool, I need to play. Like, I actually need to go like have fun doing stuff. So 2 weeks ago, I was at a roller coaster park or a theme park or something with my adult guy friend. And we're just like, cool, we're going. It's out of season. We hit like every ride before just totally poured on us and they closed the park. But it was so fun. And I was like, this is great. But then it's like, okay, like let's remind myself again, like how do I make this very boring task of like writing this proposal fun? How do I like make this editing thing fun or playful or whatever? And it's like, even if, you know, I have this really cool job, career, whatever I'm in, there are still parts that I find so boring and I struggle to do them. And I imagine the same thing with pretty much every career or every job, every whatever it is, even if you're like a billionaire. I'm pretty sure like Jeff Bezos and like Elon Musk, like, oh, I have to like do this stupid thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's the reality for most people. And like, I had a similar situation where I was facilitating a workshop and I told people to like write this, they give permission to themselves to do something that they don't feel comfortable doing. And then they're like, can you share what you wrote? And I was like, yeah, I wrote draw more. And they were like, what? But you draw every day. And I was like, yeah, but sometimes I forget to draw for the sake of drawing. Like I draw every day for work. And I don't have the same feeling drawing something about, you know, like whatever meeting you're having than when I just like take a piece of paper and a pen and start doodling just because, you know, like, so reconnecting with that thing of like, I do it because I enjoy it and it recharges me, but not because it's work and I have to do it. Because even though I love doing it, even if it's work, well, I do not have the same experience, or I don't experience it the same way if I'm doing it just because. Like no one is going to see this doodle that I'm going to do and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Doing that for like intrinsic motivation or just to play, you know, like being that kid again. Just be like, I'm creating. Like my daughter, seriously, like if we'd time her, she'd probably do like one piece of paper, like with a drawing or a doodle or something on it, like every 2 minutes at least, just churning them out. And she's like, yeah, Dad, I just gave you a bunch of stuff. This is for you. You know, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Like just, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I kind of feel like, yeah, that play attitude definitely missing in my life at times, but definitely other people's lives. I'm like, come on, like.
And going back to those parts of our job, sorry.
No, go for it.
Okay, those parts of our job that we don't enjoy as much is like, how can we, well, there's no way to make it fun, like maybe, but how can we make it more endurable or less boring or less draining? And how can we balance what we're doing throughout the day so it's not all like, I'm not crazy about admin and, you know, accounting, and I still have to do it because I'm an entrepreneur, right? But like, how can I do it in a way that is not just like, ugh, you know, is this heavy task that I have to accomplish? And even if it means, you know, like the music I'm going to listen to while I do it, or like the dancing that I'm going to do before I jump into it, whatever it is, to like kind of change that switch of like, ugh, you know, because yes, most of the parts of my job, I enjoy them. So like, it is worth to do this part so I get to do the other, that it recharges me and that, you know, fulfills my passions and my desires to do and do this and share it with the world.
Yeah, I have this definition of like creativity, of just, it's a very like basic one, like just doing something different or doing something new. So like no matter what it is, like if it's a boring admin task, you're just trying to get through it. Like you inject creativity into that. It's like, how do I do this differently? How do I do this in a new way? And it's like, cool, like music for one, you mentioned that, like moving for another is like another cool thing. Some people could even like record themselves like Instagram or for TikTok and just be like, I'm going through this boring stuff. So like every 2 minutes, just be like, you know, like tell us how you're feeling about this boring thing, you know, and that then becomes fun. I've got these timers. I don't know where one is right now, but it's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, like that just makes it fun. Like I'm going to crush this admin task in 5 minutes. Let me just do this. It feels so good, you know, rather than be like, it's going to crush me. It's like, you just spin that around, you know. Yeah. But I'm curious to know if you have a definition for creativity. I know there's like a bazillion and one definitions, but when people are talking to you about creativity, like, is there an easy way that you explain it to them?
I would say my definition is pretty similar to yours, but more than using the definition of creativity, I use the they what is not.
Okay.
Because there's this misconception of like creativity or creative people are those who draw. Creative people are artists, and either you have it or you don't. So more than explaining what creativity is, I try to demystify this thing of like, is this like untouchable thing that people either have or have not? You were either born with it or you were not. And I tell people is kind of a muscle that we can develop the same way we develop any other, or a skill that we can develop the same way we develop other. And I always use the idea, the metaphor of running a marathon. And it's funny because I don't run marathons, but
you have or you haven't?
I haven't, and I'm not gonna do it. But I have a lot of friends who do it.
I'm with you there. I'm 100% with you there.
I'm not even gonna try, but I admire people who do it. And I tell them, like, if you want to run a marathon, do you put your running shoes and go on and run 42K the first day? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. It's the same thing with creativity. You know, this person that you say they're so creative, they're like that because they've been challenging themselves. I've been taking visual notes for 10 years. And every time I look at my drawings and I'm like, so how could we improve this? How could you do this? And I challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone constantly. Every time that I think there's no solution for something, there's no better challenge for me than people telling me there's no way to solve this. I'm like, oh yeah, there is. You know, I like those challenges. So it's like, instead of telling them, okay, creativity is this, I tell them creativity is something that we can train, that we can practice, that we can accomplish. It's not this black magical thing that you either have or not.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
In anything, you know, like creativity is not about drawing. Creativity is about finding a recipe with the 3 only things you have left on your fridge, or, you know, finding a solution to this problem at work that people say there's no way to get it solved. It could be so many things, and you can apply it in anything that you do. So it's not art related, it's everything related. I don't know if I answered the question, but
I love that, because so firstly, I come across a lot of creative people in, you know, like air quotes.
Yeah.
They do drawing stuff, design stuff, animation, that kind of stuff. But sometimes I'm like, you're not very creative. Like your paintings are cool or your drawings are cool. You got this like cool animation, but like, why don't you market yourself creatively? Like, what about your business administration problem? What about your home? Like, it's not very decorative. or like, it's like you can use your creativity for other things, you know, not just like imagination or how you like lay out stuff on a page. Like that for me is like, it's a skill, but still you can apply creativity to it. But you can apply creativity to absolutely anything. And so, yeah, when I find people, I'm busy reading, pretty much like as a podcast, reading this book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic. It's so good. But now I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, she talks about like people who are curious, like people who are not in the arts or not designers or whatever. But when you find someone that is creative, like living creatively, you're like, it just feels like there's magic around them. You're like, but how are you doing life? Like it just seems like they can't do anything. They're like, yeah, my sink is broken, I'm gonna fix it. It's like, what do you mean you're gonna fix your sink? You're not a plumber. That, yeah, but you know, I can research stuff, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
And I tried it. Like one day our oven was not working, like the little buttons or something. We just took out the whole oven and we started like taking things apart. And at one stage we're like, should we just call an electrician or should we just buy a new one?
A new oven.
And they were like, no, hold on, let's give it like half an hour more, let's carry on. And so we just keep on looking at it, and then we start trying stuff. We've got toothpicks, we've got like sticky stuff. I call it press stick. I don't know what it's called in the rest of the world. Blue tack maybe. And we're like trying these things, taping it, and eventually we get it working, and we're like, okay, we're just gonna put it back in now, shoop,
Slowly.
and we're like, it's working, and it was just like, yes, like we did this thing, like we basically saved our oven, rather than just being like, can't do this, whatever. And that like kind of responsibility, or I find it just saying like that creativity, like I'm creating my life, I'm choosing to be intentional about how I take care of things or how I approach problems. Like I'm fixing all kinds of stuff, like water pipes. Like I replaced an entire toilet cistern thing the other day. Like 20-year-old
whenever
Rich
you
would
want
be
to
like,
come over, you're more than welcome.
yes. Seriously, I'm like, anyone's like, yeah, I have a problem. Like, let me come have a look.
Yes.
I just have that, like, I can figure this out. Friends across the road, like, we need to get a washing machine up here. And I'm like, oh, cool. I can't remember what I did. But I'm like, can you take these shelves out? They're like, yeah, we can take those shelves out. I'm like, cool. Take those out and we'll just pop it in and then we'll put the shelves back in. We did that. And they're like, huh. And I was like, yeah. And so it kind of feels like the more you practice, the more you observe, the more you just like sit in something,
and
the more like creative you can be.
As you were telling this story, there's two things that really like kind of like make me excited about. Is that the first one is the curiosity. I think that I would add that to my definition. Like creativity is something related to curiosity. Like people who are creative is because they're curious. They want to know more. They want to ask questions. They want to, experience new things. And there's all this whole thing where like the more, create, like ideas are never new ideas or a mix of two things or three or whatever that you've experienced, right? So the more you expose yourself to new experiences, new people, new cultures, the more creative you are, because the more access you have to different things that you can mix to create something new. And then the other thing is that feeling after you do it. Like you said, you put the oven back and then like it works, and it's like I think I'm kind of addicted to that feeling of like, yes, it was possible after I thought it was not. And that makes me want more challenges, more ideas, more, like it's like that feeling of like I was able to do it, or I was able to like take this really complex topic and turn it into a visual that people that were experts about it couldn't even like visualize, but we were able to do it. And it's like just like that feeling of being able to accomplish it is just amazing. So give yourself small challenges where you start experiencing that, and that then you most likely will want to keep doing it.
It has that like, so like I'm just trying to like reconcile this with a normal person's idea of creativity. It's like, yeah, just ditch drawing. Like, oh, what do you mean? I was trying to be creative. It's like, yeah, but you can be creative without drawing, like, let's go. Let's teach you how to be creative. We're not going to draw. It would be like, what do you mean we're not going to draw?
Yes.
But I think that drawing is such an easy way to get people to be creative because they're so unconfident about it, unable to do it, and they can see themselves progress fairly quickly in a non-pressurized environment. It's like if you mess up your doodle, you're still fine. If you mess up your toilet, not good, And so it's like that skill, and I don't know, maybe it goes back to school, but like that skill of trying stuff and failing and trying again, and like I would sit at like math classes trying to do Sudokus or whatever they're called, Sudokus.
I love them.
And I couldn't get them. Like all of my peers were finishing them before me, and I was like, this is frustrating because I solve problems. Like my parents once like were driving out of a holiday home while I was trying to do this like puzzle on the table that I had to leave there. Anything math related, like Chantal, my wife, is like, can you please sort this out? Just give me the algorithm. And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And people are like, but aren't you creative? And I'm like, yeah, this is creative. Like, sure, I'm not painting stuff, but I'm figuring stuff out. Like, and this, like, it, that feeling again of like, yes, I can do this. Like, yeah, I kind of feel like that's something that I want to bring into people's idea of what creativity is. And it's not just imaginative thought or dreaming. It's like, it's also doing, it's also the ability, it's the confidence to do stuff. Yeah.
And do it in whatever you're doing right now. It doesn't have to be an added task. That's the problem, that people are like, but I don't have time. I'm like, but you don't need any extra time. Just choose one thing that you do every day and try to do it in a different way for a week. Or try to, so it could be, every day you have to come to work and the first thing you have to do is send an email to follow up with something. Okay, how are you going to do that email in a different way? Maybe one day you're going to send a video, another day you're going to do a doodle, another, try to do it in a different way every single day, and you're exercising your creativity. Or you have to prep meals every day when you get back home. Okay, try to prep 5 different recipes with the same ingredients. So you don't have to spend a lot of money in groceries. You're buying a bunch of things, and then with that same bunch of things, you're preparing 5 different meals. You're exercising your creativity, and you're not doodling, and you're not taking any extra time. It was something you had to do anyways. You had to come home and prepare supper. So just do it in a different way.
I love that. Like, creativity, just like, it can invade any and every aspect of life. It's not just like the typically artistic or creative, ones. Oh, I love that. Let's change tack a little bit. And I want to ask you about your PhD. Like, what are you PhDing on? What are you researching? What are you becoming a doctor in? Because I'm like, are you going to become a doodling doctor? Because this could be pretty cool.
Kind of, yeah. So I'm actually working on my research proposal right now. So I haven't started my research yet, per se. But what I want to look into is what makes a creative intervention successful. So what's the difference between those moments where we use doodles and they just plop and they don't work, or where we use doodles and people are like, wow, and they like are able to do their task, do it well, and kind of create that synergy where they move forward with it. Because it happens a lot that we go to a meeting, we discuss things, we're excited, but we leave the meeting, go back to our day-to-day, and then that energy kind of dies. So it's like, what does it take for a creative intervention or for visual notes to make these meetings successful?
Do you have any theories?
I have a lot of theories, but I've been struggling with that because I have my theories and then I'm like, I shouldn't have my theories and prove them right. I should be open to whatever my data is going to tell me, right? But I do have theories and I can't say I don't. And my theory is that the power is in the process of how we facilitate these tools. So a lot of people are like, oh, and again, going back to like, I cannot do beautiful drawings. It doesn't matter if the drawings are super nice or they're not. They're not like the success, how successful your intervention is doesn't have to do with how nice your drawings are. It's about the process, how much you engage people in the process and how much you co-create these results instead of being just one person creating it on the side.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me a lot of the idea of like letting a team come up with their own ideas. Exactly. And I can imagine if someone's like, super good at drawing, whether it's a facilitator or the visual note taker or one person in the room, it'd be like, oh, their ideas are very good. But if you can all speak the same language, all in the same kind of way, that would help a lot. But also, I think that when it comes to researching that kind of stuff, are you going to do a lot of like, what do they call it, empirical kind of research? Like, are you going to do a lot of your own like tests, or how would you call it, experiments?
I'm going to do part where like I'm going to observe my experience through it and like how but the idea is also I'm going to train people to take visual notes and then observe them as they facilitate interventions with visual notes. And then also have that conversation with them of how the experience was, what worked well, what didn't work well, but also with the participants. So it's like data from different perspectives of like my experience, the experience of those who facilitate, and the experience of those who are participating. What worked well, what are the challenges, what helped or hindered the process, and so on.
Oh, man, that's amazing. And let's chat more about that after the podcast. At the moment, I'm like, oh, visual note taking, workshops, creativity. I've kind of like zoned in on an obsession. I was reading an article, I think it was by Sam Altman. It was just like something like how to be successful, but it was pretty long. So I've had it on one of my tabs for, I don't know, like 2 years or something. I'm like, I'm going to read that one day. One day I'm going to get there. Finally did. And he was talking about like, you can become like averagely wealthy or whatever, having a job. It's like, thanks, like, great. But you're not going to become like super wealthy. You're not going to have like this amazing, super cool, purpose-driven life. But if you have an obsession, if you have this like insatiable desire around a particular thing, then there's a bigger chance of that happening because you're obsessed with it. Like, what is that one thing that you're like, this is it? And it may not make sense to a lot of people because, well, no one's done it before, or very few people have done it. And so, yeah, I was like, well, I've taught a bunch of stuff, creativity, productivity kind of stuff. I've done animation, doodling, art, websites, coding, like all this kind of stuff that I've had this interest in. But I was like, you know what? Like, if AI takes over, like completely revolutionizes everything, creativity is still going to be the one thing
I believe
that you can literally like dig your way out of a hole with, or like reinvent yourself with.
Yes.
And on the flip side, if stuff goes south and the world gets blown up and we're back to farming, like it's creativity that you're going to be like, how do I do this differently, people? I need to figure this out. There's going to be no YouTube, in the apocalypse or whatever. Like, we need creativity. So I was just like, okay, like I would love to help people create and be creative in all areas of their life. I don't know where this was going, but that was just like
the obsession part, I think. I think
What's
the
that?
obsession, like you said, you have to be obsessed about something specific to like be successful, or to like make it big. And I think like making it big or not, the obsession part is helpful because there's no journey that has no struggles or no challenges. And if you're not obsessed with it, you'll just let it go and move to the next adventure. But when you're obsessed with it, it doesn't matter how many struggles are in front of you or how many challenges, you're going to figure it out and you're going to keep moving because you're convinced that this is the thing, right? Like, my 10-year journey as an entrepreneur has not been like easy going the whole time. I've had my ups and downs and really downs and really ups. But like in those down moments, what kept me going is that I believe in what these can do. Like, I'm obsessed with it and I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to, find a way to like communicate the benefits or whatever it is that at the beginning, like it was hard for me to communicate it. And I was like, well, I'm going to try 1,000 different ways if that's what it takes. But I need to get this out there because I know that it can have an impact in the way people work, in the way people communicate. And that kept me going through those times that, it could have been easy to say, you know what, this is not working. I'm just going to look for a full-time job and go back to, my safe path.
Yeah. I mean, I think, about people sitting in meetings, and oftentimes I've been, focused on a creative individual, and the idea of lighting somebody's like eyes up, like making them sparkle, making their soul come on fire, like that, like, ooh, like I can do this kind of moment. Like for an individual, I'm like, I love that. Like if that's animation for you, like let me like spark that. If it's coding, let me show you how to do that. Like whatever it is. But I'm like, what about those corporate people? I don't even know what most corporate people do. I just see like email writing and boring meeting. Like, I'm like, what do you guys do actually? But when you sit in those meetings and somebody has this idea and they get to like voice it, and somebody's like, that's a great idea, let's make it happen. They're like, oh, like my idea, it just got like vetoed. Like that like spark in the eye in a team meeting, or, finally seeing the team leader be like, finally, we're getting this thing off the ground. It's been like 7 months like of continual meeting, like that kind of stuff. And I know that organizations have great plans, great goals, all kinds of stuff that they, add value. It's like, cool. Like, let me be obsessed with this. Like, let me implement like little creativity, I don't know, hooks or whatever in all parts of people's lives.
Yeah, and thank goodness we have people who are obsessed with completely different things, because that's the way we keep advancing in different ways, We couldn't all
Yeah.
doodle all day for a living. We would not have a job. But, like the idea of making it more fun and exercising that creativity, so whatever you're obsessed with can evolve more and can move forward and can get to the place where you want it to get.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so pumped. Like,
Me too,
I don't know how many conversations you have like this, but it's just like in the live moment, I'm just like, oh, this is so good. Like, I don't know. I don't think I felt like this for a long time. Like creativity, workshops, visual note taking, doodling, helping people be creative. It's just like, and it's not just that, right? It's like you're talking about psychology, about change, all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting, like leadership, making decisions, that kind of stuff. It all lines up. And to like come full circle, when you're talking about in the beginning, like being able to listen to a lot of the stuff that's being spoken about, I can imagine like doing some visual noting, like, sorry, I have a really interesting question. This sounds amazing, but can I like, do you ever do that? Or be like, I have an idea, like I'm synthesizing things here. What about this one over here? Or do you just like,
well, it depends the situation and it depends the client. I always have the conversation of like, how much do you want me to get involved in this process? Because some people are like, I want you to be my silent partner and take notes. But I love, you were talking about Postits, and I love Postits because it's a great way for me to like feed my visual or feed my drawing with the participants' ideas, right? Like I come to a meeting and my concept of what's important and what's not might not be the same as the people in the room. And I wanted to reflect what is important to them because they're the ones who are going to keep this and hopefully go back to it to like keep their project moving. So getting Post-its from people with the ideas that they believe are key and getting things, but it happens when they're like, I hear the same word for like 5 times and I'm like, I have no idea what that even means. How am I going to draw it? I write it in a Post-it, I put it on my visual, and I make sure I leave space for it because I'm like, I know it's important. They've been talking about it for 15 minutes, but I have no idea what that says. And then during breaks, I go to like one of my contact clients and I'm like, so do you mind explaining to me what this is about? And then they explain me and I'm like, oh, that makes sense because they were talking about, and so I find ways to connect it. But yeah, it happens obviously that I come up across like terms that I have no idea what they mean, but I just realized how people get super excited about them or how they repeat the word 7 times. And I'm like, that's important. I'm just going to take notes of this and ask it. And I put it on the side.
That's so good.
But it's also a great way to like for people to realize with an outsider like, oh yeah, we've been trying to explain that to clients for a while and they don't get it. I'm like, of course they don't get it because you're being really technical about it. But like when they're talking between themselves, they don't realize it. Once I get there, I'm like, and what's that? Well, we thought it was clear. I'm like, no, it's not. Let's have a conversation about what that is. And once they explain it to me and I get it, I'm like, okay, you can explain it to people that way. They're going to get it now. Most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, I don't know where I saw it, but the idea of bringing in experts not in your field to meetings. Because then they're like, yeah, I'm an expert, so I feel confident. But like, what is this thing? Like, can you guys explain that to me? Like, I'm trying to make connections here, but I don't know what this is. And when they start like explaining and someone's asking these very obvious questions, like it helps people just dumb it down or like explain it, like to a 5-year-old or something like that. Yeah. And then the expert's like, okay, I'm like synthesizing like how I make bread with like your technical like IT problems right now. Oh, I have an idea, So yeah, it's a very, very cool, I don't know, way to do it. But what I've been like stewing on is that I think you mentioned it earlier, but there's different ways to bring about creativity in a meeting or a conference or a talk or whatever. Yeah, just like open my eyes or open my brain a bit to be like, what is your toolbox or what is your tool set when coming into a meeting or a company, an organization or a team? It's like, how on the fly do you make decisions? Like, are you like, no guys, this is where I'm doodling, we're not changing this up? Or have you in the past been like, okay guys, this is not working, let's take out some sticky notes, or let's go for a walk, or I bought some Play-Doh. Like,
I normally go to a meeting, well, something bigger than this, but this makes part of it. And it's like my toolkit where I have like, and I'm pretty sure you've seen most of them, but like, the story cubes, and then
I used to have those.
And then I have this one, like a game to draw, and I have these cards that are actually a board game, but I use the cards as visual metaphors. So I have tons of stuff, and I have a plan that I prepared, but I believe like the principle of meet the client where they're at. So I might have a plan, but then if I see things are not, when I feel that I have to force things too much, is because I'm not being helpful or useful to the organization or the group. So I say it's all about having a plan, but also about knowing when to derail from it. And I try, like, I trust my intuition one way or another, as crazy as it sounds. And I'm not scared of saying, you know what, I feel the energy is down. We're going to stand up. We're going to pair up. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes. You're going to work around the corridors in the office and talk about, whatever. And then I give them like the craziest problem to solve or anything that is not related to the meeting. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I just need like, take a step back, get out of this, move around, and then we'll sit down and talk about your real problem. But for now, we're going to solve the problem on like how mice can, jump from the kitchen counter to the first floor without getting killed. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, pair up and find solution. Anything. That's so great. Like, I move things around, not just for the sake of it, of like, oh, I want to do something crazy and different. No, because I think it's in the best interest of the group. So, like using these little interventions when I think that they're going to help the group accomplish their goal. So I always come with like plan A, B, and C in my back pocket in case things need to move around.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Like, it feels like my brain is sufficiently like, oh yeah, there's not just Post-it notes now. Like, what else can we use? Like you mentioned Play-Doh and story cubes. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I can get on board with this. This is even more fun than I thought it was. Like, this is great. But coming back to the best interest of the group. Yes. It's not like, hi guys, I got this new thing I want to try. It's like, oh, actually, this is not going to work for you guys. This will work though. But yeah, we've been chatting for an hour plus. I know that we could chat for a lot longer, but I'm going to say, let's call it. Thank you so much for joining me on the TapTapKaboom podcast. I love talking about creativity. And honestly, like, it's been an amazing conversation. And my brain is like, ooh, I have lots of things. I'm like, yes, this is what I want to do. I have a lot of questions, which I'm going to ask you afterwards because it's cool. Sure. And it's like my, what is it called? My privilege. Yeah, the host's privilege to talk to the guest afterwards, backstage or whatever. So I'm going to pop up your website here, visualversa.com. Yeah. What is Versa? Like, I understand the visual. Is Versa a nickname or something?
Well, it was a like word game kind of that occurred to me when I was thinking of like how to call myself when I went on my own journey. And so I thought about vice versa and then changed the first part of vice versa for visual, and kind of like thinking about how like with drawings we can see like these different sides of things and show like the importance of different perspectives. And that's how visual was born.
That's so cool. So yeah, I guess people can book you.
Absolutely.
For different kinds of things. You've got a TEDx talk. You've got cool Instagram content. Do you have anything else that people can consume or take or read or anything like that?
I have an online course, and I have like my services on the website, but either Instagram, LinkedIn, or the contact form in the website are the best way for people to reach me. And I love having conversations and seeing what's the best way that I can help, like either individuals or organizations. So I don't believe in a cookie cutter approach. So like if you want to chat with me and find different ways in which we can collaborate, I'm more than happy to have a conversation about it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And oh, wait, there was a comment. Okay, no question though. Annie Bechard says, OMG, I could listen on that subject for hours too. Very interesting. Thank you both. Thanks for tuning in, Annie, and thank you for tuning in everyone else. You guys are amazing. And I'm going to press this big... Sorry, what?
I said thank you for creating this space, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. I think there will have to be an episode 2. But thank you so much for today. You've been amazing. I'm going to press this big red button now.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.